There's a person who still speaks publicly about their treatment, changing their life, and they have been essentially cured of the disease. They can live out and open in the public since their treatment.
I know, Liz, that you are patient zero when it comes to this space. And it's only I think a couple of hundred people have taken it for anti-aging purposes.
Yeah, probably over 300. I would say that I was definitely suffering from the disease of aging. My gain of function since those gene therapies has been enormous.
And so what value have you seen so far since then?
That's an interesting one for me.
Welcome to Longevity Unpacked, the gene therapy special. Imagine reprogramming your DNA to prevent disease, repair damage, or even slow aging itself. That is the frontier of gene therapy, and it is advancing faster than most people realize. Today, I am joined by Liz Parrish, who is the first patient to take gene therapy for longevity purposes and a leading entrepreneur in this space, and Boyang Wang, investor and founder of the longevity fund Immortal Dragons, backing the companies pushing this field forward. Will gene therapy cost less than a single course of cancer drug by 2040?
Well, in fact, many of the COVID-19 vaccines are gene therapies themselves. So totally yes, probably quicker than that.
Do you think by 2035 we'll have a gene therapy for longevity approved?
The quick answer is probably...
The future of longevity is being shaped in Geneva this October. The Global Longevity Summit is an intimate gathering at the Genolia Innovation Hub, running from October the 28th to the 30th, with pioneers like Aubrey de Grey, Matt Kaberlein, and Amy Killen. I am grateful to be joining as an advisor. And if you would like to be there too, you can get 10% off tickets with the code BEYONDTOMORROW. Just check the description for the link. I'll see you there. So Liz, why do you think our listeners should learn about gene therapy?
Well, I mean, number one, I think that most people in the future will be genetically modified in order to survive disease. So today we die predictably, if we live long enough, of cancer, dementia, chronic kidney disease, and a slew of heart-related conditions. So if we want to not die of those things, which I'm assuming that we all have a mandate that we don't want to die of those things, we will start taking gene therapies to basically circumvent that process. And so that we can live longer and healthier and less time in ill health.
And the question, what are gene therapies? Explain it to me like I'm a 5-year-old and I've never heard the thing before.
Every cell of your body pretty much has your human genome. And the genes are units of heredity. What's interesting is all species on the planet that we think of as being living species have something called DNA. And these are sequences, and they're put in different combinations, and those different combinations define a species. It's as simple as that. It's actually quite beautiful. And so every cell of your body has these genes, and they code for who you are. They code for your eye color, your skin color, and unfortunately, they also code for the diseases that we'll die from. So by changing these or adding additional units of heredity, DNA, we're hoping to change how we live and make it so that we live more healthy. And how we do that is there's a variety of ways to deliver genes. I have 2 companies. One company delivers long-lasting gene therapies, meaning that you would take a single gene therapy and it would last for 10 or more years. New studies that came out with hemophilia patients showed that those genes are still active 13 years later. They're still keeping them from having that disease. So we know that these are long-lasting gene therapies, and that's great because then you can set it and kind of forget it. You don't have to take them very often. Other gene therapies, I have another company that's working on gene therapies that will last 6 months or longer, and they're properly done, not something that, people are just trying to get you to buy something and maybe it works and maybe it doesn't. So the reason that we would do this is because we know there are human genes that are associated with longer, healthier life. They have functions at the cellular level and at the systemic level that help us live longer and hopefully will keep us from getting those terrible diseases. So when you take a gene therapy, you would take it by injection, or you might have an image-guided delivery to a specific organ. An injection meaning IV, where it goes systemically. It's a clear liquid. And what it has in it is vectors in one case and a very specific delivery method in the other case that takes it to your cells, it docks with your cells, and it goes into your cells and it delivers genetic material. Now, we specialize in both companies in not integrating into your already pre-existing human genome. So your human genome stays the same, but we deliver genes to your cells, to a special spot in your cells called the nucleus for long-lasting expression. And they then sit there and they code. And when a gene codes, it means that it's read by the cell. There's an mRNA process to read the gene sequence, and then it creates proteins. And those proteins then make you healthier and more resistant to aging-associated diseases, is our hope.
There's something you said recently, which was gene therapy basically creates what peptides does, but at a cellular level for the rest of your life. And what that basically means is that people that are taking peptides every day have to inject or take them orally every single day. But gene therapy is potentially a one-off, and then you're good. Is that right?
Exactly. So the idea where gene therapy started was in the monogenic space. So I'm going to say big words and then I'm going to tell you what they mean. Fantastic. Monogenic, mono means one, and genic means genetic. So when a person is born with a single gene, one gene mutation, this can actually cause a cascade of issues that lead to specific diseases. And we already mentioned hemophilia. So there's hemophilia A, there's hemophilia B, there's beta thalassemia. There's a whole category of monogenic diseases, meaning you had a child and you suddenly realize they're not very healthy, they're not doing very well, and it's because of one gene. This is where gene therapy started, and this is where we saw the curative effect to disease. So now in the United States alone, there are 12 approved gene therapies for generally rare inherited disorders of monogenic disease. And what this is doing is with one treatment, it's upregulating the protein that then changes the outcome of the disease for that person's life. In the case of severe combined immune deficiency, that was boy in the bubble disease. They started treating that in the 1990s. And there's a person who still speaks publicly about their treatment, changing their life. And they have been essentially cured of the disease. They can live out and open in the public since their treatment.
Fascinating. And I think there's probably from what I know about cell and gene therapy and gene therapy, you have treatments for a lot of rare diseases, and then you have now gene therapy for the longevity space as an anti-aging solution. Am I right in splitting it into two buckets?
Yeah, because one of them is polygenic, meaning multiple genes. So with aging, a lot of things go wrong. So number one, we can't cure all of aging yet, but we can hit the molecular hallmarks of aging. And therefore, we can start penetrating the cells and the physiological effects of aging with certain gene therapies and changing outcomes that we hope will continue and contribute to the cascade of what will be the combinatorial gene therapy to actually cure aging. So right now we can increase your muscle mass, your brain function, we can lengthen your telomeres, we can affect your metabolic, FGF21 is associated with, people take Ozempic. FGF21 is associated with being able to eat in animal models, all the fat they want, but keeping a normal body weight and living longer without the nasty side effects of Ozempic, which will probably cause a cascade of health consequences in the next 10 years.
Let's go on to self-experimentation. I know, Liz, that you are patient zero when it comes to this space. And it's only I think a couple of hundred people have taken it for anti-aging purposes, or is it?
Yeah, probably over 300.
Okay.
Maybe even more than that since the last time it was quoted.
And Boyang, you've also taken gene therapies, right?
Yeah, I was the first person. Oh, Boyang, you have taken it as well? Oh, okay, fantastic.
The follistatin gene therapy by Mini Circle. That was the one taken.
So we have 2 people in the room out of 300 in the world, which is pretty amazing. Liz, you went to Colombia to take one of the BioViva therapeutics there. Were you, I know it's your company, but were you a bit nervous about the whole process before taking it?
Yeah, we took 2 in 2015, and since then I've taken 8 more. We do a different type of gene therapy than the Mini Circle company's gene therapy. So those ones are the short acting ones. The ones we take are expressions that might be with you for a lifetime. So number 1, different considerations go into that. Number 2, one of the gene therapies, telomerase reverse transcriptase, had never been used in a human. And follistatin had been through safety and efficacy with muscular dystrophy through a nationwide children's hospital, but they hadn't been used in combination. So we actually studied the gene therapies for 2 years. We looked at all the papers and the research around it. And I really did it as a gift to the world to launch a company that was really destined to open source this technology to everyone, and to see if we could actually medically cure not only an aging population but children as well. Because I did this on tail of my son being diagnosed with type 1 diabetes and just being really shocked that so many children are still dying of potentially treatable diseases. It took me a couple years into looking for cures for kids to run into the anti-aging space. And sort of, we never really shift gears. What we did is every gene that we look at actually will also treat a childhood disease. And by doing more research on those candidates with a consenting adult population, because it's very, very difficult to work in children. That's mostly the world of children's hospitals around the world. We would be able to expedite these treatments to children as well for diseases in which they might also have a curative effect. So these are gene candidates that have like a global benefit to both ends of the aging spectrum, the young and the old, which is, highly beneficial to the world.
And what did you feel afterwards? Like, what was the initial benefit that you saw over the next few years? And it's been, 10 years now since your first treatment?
Yeah, it's been 10 years. And
by the way, you look fantastic, whatever your age is, which I know, but you look phenomenal for your age as well.
Yeah, I'm 54 now. So, the benefits were really the lack of limitations that I had at 44, which sounds crazy, but I did it to find out if these technologies worked, because it wasn't really ethical to use them in a person who might not have the full breadth of understanding of the technology. I would say that I was definitely suffering from the disease of aging, and I should have had the right in any country to take the gene therapies that I thought might treat my condition. But that being said, outside of some wrinkles and some, slowing with age, I didn't have any debilitating or life-threatening issues that would have killed me in the next year, let's say. But that also being said, my gain of function since those gene therapies has been enormous. I started doing things that I hadn't done for a very long time. I have a high level of energy. I can keep up with, a massive amount of travel and stress with not much response. I started carrying all the groceries in the house and climbing on counters and just doing things that you don't realize that you're not doing with over time. And so we also saw in my blood markers, my inflammatory markers go down exponentially, and they have stayed down. I think my last CRP marker was like 0.01 or something, or 0.02, something like that, really low. And those are important because I think they were in the 2s and 3s before the gene therapy. So keeping those inflammatory markers down, my muscle mass definitely increased. In 2020, I moved forward to building a new protocol with some people to help patients with dementia. So I took that gene therapy before those patients did, because I thought it was imperative that I try the gene therapies before anyone else did, because they were opening an investigator-initiated clinical study. And
which is, sorry, just to explain what exactly that is.
So an investigator-initiated clinical study is an ethics-approved study between a group of 6 medical doctors, and it's a study done by consent. It has a lead investigator, a principal investigator of the study, and then it has pre and post data and the whole informed consent. And then the patients were patients with mild to moderate to advanced cognitive decline with associated Alzheimer's. So they all had to come in with fMRIs. They had to come in with a variety of blood work and a pre-diagnosis of suspected Alzheimer's. And then, of course, we did a lot of follow-up with them after that. But after taking Clotho, my IQ scores went up, and that went on, I believe, in medical tourism to be a very successful gene therapy for cognitive enhancement. And again, these are the gene therapies that are based in the science, the long-term expression of the genes. And they're based on the science of the expansion of lifespan in animals. And I think that, those are really critical points. If you're going to participate in a therapy, you're definitely going to want to make sure that there's some evidence behind it and some data around it.
Boyang, you've been sitting very patiently there, so I'll bring the mic over to you. When I think about Liz's the benefits Liz has seen, I always think to myself about that time when I was in college and I just felt immortal. I could do anything. I could party every night, 20 nights in a row, and still be functioning the next day. And that's why, for me, that's when I realized, like, damn, I've definitely aged. I'm still 33, but I've definitely aged. For you, what was your why for taking gene therapies?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I'm 34 this year, by the way. So yeah, I totally feel what you feel. For my case, well, there is at least twofold. First of all, existence, survival, aging has always been a central theme in my life. So I wanted to explore these like way before I actually started to work full-time in longevity and biotech healthcare. So with that, some of the gene therapy programs that is in development or already been rolled out are a pretty meaningful step towards our longevity and anti-aging goals. That's one. And on the other hand, as an investor in this space, I always have a strong motivation help the first wave of longevity companies to achieve revenue and profit, and therefore there can be a sort of a fortune flywheel whereby the investors will benefit, the startup founders will benefit, and in turn it will attract more talent, resources, attention, capital into the space. With that, those two elements, I of course looked into a mini circles program there are programs by BioViva and a few other gene therapy companies. One of our portfolio company, Unlimited Bio, also have their program that have shown evidences that is based on science, based on some molecules that have been researched into, such as follistatin, clotho being a very popular one, and VEGF and so on. So with those two motivations in mind, I received the mini-circle follistatin gene therapy.
When did you take the gene therapy?
Oh, that was January of 2024.
And so what value have you seen so far since then?
Right, that's an interesting one for me. So actually, I don't feel tangible differences, and that is not entirely unexpected. So for the mini circles gene therapy, the delivery vector is one that's rather mild or low risk, right? They use the PEI polymer, and is indeed not so long lasting, but then the effect could be small for some individuals. For my case, I didn't feel much tangible differences. I feel good overall, but in terms of biomarkers, especially the one that's tracked by your usual blood work, I didn't see much differences. But also there's no, tangible aversive effects. So that's pretty fortunate as well.
You're just bigging up BioViva here, I feel.
I you know what? I am so happy that Boyang invested in Unlimited Bio because they licensed our technology. So by investing in them, he's investing in us, in the sense that they will move forward with our follistatin and our clotho technology, and that's I'm very happy about that.
and Liz, would you?
The tiny circle. Yeah, we're all in this together.
So Liz, when Boyang says that he wasn't able to really notice much difference, is that because of his age? Where
no. It's because of the delivery. So what we do is the vector delivery, which gets it to the nucleus of the cell for long-term expression. They're doing, like he said, it's a plasmid. It's not going to last very long. It is a lower dose of a technology, and
this is because this is mini circle, which is different to
but they're not mini circles. So mini circles actually will last longer in a cell, but a plasmid isn't going to last as long. It's going to have a smaller therapeutic effect, but a lot of people might feel more comfortable using that technology. But for follistatin, I would just suggest doing the gene therapy with the vectors, because there actually is no known negative effect to follistatin. It protects against 3 types of cancers. It's better for your blood glucose. It's better for in that case for insulin sensitivity, and it lowers inflammatory markers. So it's something that I definitely would suggest after a certain age. He's very young. That you have upregulated as permanently as possible, and in a dosage like our company would do. I'm not sure what dosages Unlimited Bio would use, but we would use dosages that would go for a measurable therapeutic effect.
I think some people at home might be scratching their heads at the difference between vector and plasmid. So just to go bit deeper into that. So I'm assuming vector is when you change. You're literally changing the. You explain it.
I will explain it in a way that you won't forget, because it'll kind of be shocking to some people. But since gene therapy started, the only way for us to get a measurable effect and a long-term effect is to use what used to be viruses. Viruses are evolutionarily designed to attach to your cell and get genetic material into the nucleus of the cell. And that's where we go for long-term expression. We can then deliver a transcript, a transcription of a gene, a promoter, and probably really optimized codons. And that's where where companies specialize. So you can use the same gene but get a different effect with different companies because it really goes back to their scientific team of how well they can specialize the transcription of the actual gene itself. We're going for long-term expression, and evolutionarily, this is how you get it. You get it into the nucleus of the cell. Other technologies will often only get it into the cytoplasm. The other company that I have is the first company in the world that is actually building a design that will pull a mini circle into the nucleus of the cell for long-term expression, which may make it last for 6 months, 6 years or more, and it's going to be able to pull different material into it as well. So some technology, if you don't have a hardcore vector delivery, you're just going to get a shorter term transcription because you're not going to get pulled into the nucleus, and the cell is going to cut it up and say, you don't belong here. I'll transcribe you a few times and then you're out.
Thank you for that explanation.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. This is being really... So the gene therapy space was burgeoning in the 90s and then 2000s, and then it was really held back due to a few unfortunate incidences that happened that really pulled the space back for a decade or so. How do you aim to go fast, get these products to market, be pioneering, but also make sure that mistakes of the past don't happen again?
There are definitely risks in rolling out a therapy too fast to the general public. But at the same time, there's also risks for rolling it out too slow. And the two risks, both real, both tangible, but it feels differently. It gives different impressions. Our therapy actively caused some damage. It will look pretty bad on the sector, and it could really hold back the spread of the technology. Whereas if it's a lack of approval, if the approval gets delayed and therefore many people's treatments were delayed and lives were taken, it's as if it's not your fault, it's not anybody's fault. So in the past, FDA have clearly taken that path of holding back many of the promising technologies. So my opinion is that because the other kind of risk can be totally detrimental and it could totally damage the reputation, we should be careful in rolling out technologies to general public. We should be careful about the indication that it can be applied for. We should be careful about the effect that we're promoting, whether it's enhancement, especially enhancement for an expensive therapy that seemingly is enhancement for the rich versus an indication that will be targeting some serious disease so that it's easier to comprehend by the general public, while at the same time have longevity or anti-aging effects. Just like what like GLP-1 RA class of drugs is doing right now. Is targeting, of course, type 2 diabetes, is good for weight management, and it even have anti-aging benefits. How good is that?
Liz, what do you think?
Well, I've worked in regulations for almost 8 years now, and I would tell you that the technology needs to flow quickly for people who are sick. And that's the basis of the safest use of the technology. We have a company called Best Choice Medicine. I've worked globally with different countries on bringing in these new technologies and focusing on terminally ill patients. And so in that sense, I agree with Boyang about it being used for indications in which we can see a therapeutic effect. I also agree with the use of any technology that a scientific review board and an ethics review board will approve for even healthy people if they want to participate. I think that Brian Kennedy coined a very good phrase that, the test subject the model organism for longevity seems to be billionaires. And I think that's okay if people want to understand the risk and participate, because actually we don't know the best use of the technology. And I would even suggest that the best use of the technology is preventative, because there are many things that happen with aging that are insidious, and some of those things could be irreparable if we don't actually treat patients early. And not knowing that puts us into a suspect territory of making assessments on who the proper cohort is for the treatments, in which could lead to those people dying of diseases later. So risk aversion is certainly leading to the death of millions of people this year, 36 million people. We are moving too slow for people who need it the most. So certainly people who are sick should use it. The problems that shut down gene therapy or slowed it down in the 1990s do not exist anymore. And luckily, basic science was still being done during the time of those shutdowns, and better vectors, better delivery, and a much bigger safety profile came out. Since then, though, because of the inadequate understanding of the technology, even for companies in the US, bad outcomes continue to happen. They just don't shut down the industry anymore because the curative effect is evident. So we need to make sure that companies who actually understand these technologies are moving forward into the sector, and that the regulatory bodies are communicating with companies like ours who actually do have an excellent safety profile in the licensing partners that we work with, because that information is critical to them moving forward with gene therapy companies inside the United States, making sure that they don't step out of the bounds of what a patient should actually see delivered to their bodies. So, the areas come along. It still has some issues, but not using gene therapy comes with one thing that's very, very important: 100% mortality rate, meaning that you're 100% going to die if we don't use these more, I would say, safer, better technologies. Because in the case of these technologies, unlike traditional drugs, we don't have a myriad of damage to the system. We literally use your cells as a drug factory. So with today's medicine, you can participate in it. It's longevity medicine, open heart surgery, pig heart valves, statins, all of those things are definitely longevity medicine. We show that longevity works through them because people live longer by taking those technologies. But in the future, it's going to be a series of injections without a myriad of side effects to just better health, to just not having those problems. And getting there from here to there means that we have to do work in humans, because human data is the only one that tells us if these drugs actually work. There's no model organism, and this is why the drug failure rate is so high in the United States, 94% failure rate, because animal models don't tell us if these drugs will work. Only human work does. So I'm a huge proponent for laws that allow terminal patients to get access, and that we use that data as safety data to move these drugs back to where they'll actually have the biggest impact, which is probably, at least in your 40s, if not earlier.
Very interesting.
Right.
A good
On that note, I just would like to quickly add, I want to make the case that more on the topic of how billionaires are the perfect test subject for longevity treatment. I want to make the case that this is actually a win-win situation. It benefits, the society, and is the rich people are volunteering into these treatments. If you think about it, they are actually contributing their own body for the experiment. They are no different in terms of physiological setup, right? So in that case, if you think about all the other group of the rich who would rather buy islands or sports cars, these people are actually contributing to the great scientific discovery and experimentation. yeah, in that sense, I actually do not get, and I think it's not rational, the general negative sentiment towards such phenomenon. Actually, we see some successful cases. We also see setbacks and issues, challenges. But overall, this is really like a great thing that the society as a whole should promote and even celebrate, right? So yes, let billionaires be the pioneers, be the test subjects, and then the entire society will benefit.
Yeah, we'll make it affordable, and that you have to get that data to make things affordable. And then when everybody wants that, this should be, well, it honestly should be free, because as David Sinclair pointed out in his paper, I think it was called The Cost of Aging. It's just for the US. And I know we're being really US centric, and we're actually a global audience. We're a global company. But this paper just so happened to be in the US. It's a $38 trillion savings yearly if we could just slow aging by 1 year.
Yeah.
And if the animal data was correct at all, and we wanted to be as suspicious as possible, we could probably say we could at least slow it by 3 years now with the technology we have, if we were just being super, super cautious. And so there's a huge savings here. I think we can even do better than that.
This is a great segue into a quick fire round that I want to do. And you've touched on a number of points that I am going to question you on. The first one, and let's say keep the answers to one sentence. Will gene therapy cost less than a single course of cancer drug by 2040?
Yes.
Boyang. Yes, for Liz. Boyang?
Yes.
How much do you think it will cost by 2040?
Could
it be free?
Well, in fact, many of the COVID-19 vaccines are gene therapies themselves. Of course, they are not without their controversies, but they are not unaffordable. So totally yes. Probably quicker than that.
Liz, what do you think? 2035, how much will gene therapies cost?
2035. Oh, I thought we were saying 2040.
Well, I'm giving our listeners a bit of hope.
We'll still be a capitalist-led society. We won't be like a first-class world yet. So yes, you'll still be charged for them, but they'll probably be for a long-lasting one that will last over 10 years, maybe $35,000, and your insurance should cover that.
So. And this is the slight drawback, and I really want to get into the billionaire conversation, because I think it's. I agree with you that billionaires putting their bodies out there and doing the work is moving the needle forward. But I think what some of the masses fear is that this technology or the advanced therapeutics will be out of their reach for quite a while. So, because 35,000 is a lot of money, but then if you're then allowing that person to work for 10, 15, 20 years more, then it's a huge savings. So if society, or if you're able to reduce the costs that they would be spending on their healthcare, it's a massive benefit for society. So do you think there is a conversation when you talk about regulation, and your past in regulation, Liz, that all sides need to come together, and especially in Europe where you have free healthcare, put this on the NHS as an example?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. So when you look at, so what I'm just basically sort of trying to measure in my mind, and I'm not a real good future teller. I know what should be already happening today, but I'm not a good future teller. But 10 years, companies are generally run in certain spurts, and investors expect the company to have a certain success in a certain amount of time. In 10 years, they're still going to definitely be holding the reins on that horse, trying to create profitability. So I say it's going to cost money. I'm saying that it'll be a fraction of the cost of cancer therapies. And I do think that it will be covered by insurance in most cases by then, but only if we get these drugs into the regulatory system now. Because if we were a pill, 10 years, we wouldn't even have an approval. So you could not in 10 years, if I had a pill that would cure your aging, a pill takes 15 years to get through regulations. The reason I can say 10, only if we start right now is because gene therapies, when they enter the US FDA, can get through within 6 years. They're the fastest drug through regulations because they have the most exact output. So you have to realize we have to get through regulations. We have to get the regulatory body to approve a combinatorial gene therapy to treat aging. And then we got to get it to the masses. And yes, because it would treat everyone in the world, I think it would exponentially go down. It would probably be cheaper in other countries, not the US. We have the most expensive drugs in the world here. So the investors are going to expect charges for them. They're going to expect return on money, and they're going to expect very big markets. The only way to stop that is to change the whole system. In the meantime, you will, yes, be able to find these in offshore locations. They already come at a fraction of the cost of any gene therapy in the US. The cheapest gene therapy in the US right now is about $500,000 to treat one eye.
Wow.
If your child is born with spinal muscular atrophy, it is $5 million.
$5 million.
If your child has muscular dystrophy, it is $3 million and up. So these are prohibitively expensive therapies. So me saying that in 10 years, we would be through a regulatory system and to market and at $35,000 is a big statement already. And it's based on a lot of goodwill. And it's based on the goodwill of investors to not try to then harangue the population for too much money, because those costs are adjusted with the US FDA and the investors when that drug goes to be approved. Founders like me have little say at that point. So that would be based on a lot of goodwill. In other countries are screaming forward. China is screaming forward. We have a licensing partner over there. We'll be sending our patenting information to them today so that they can apply. The Middle East is screaming forward with new laws. The Bahamas passed a law to do gene and cell therapy, but if you got a brochure and a company says they're doing it there now, they are not. They will probably be fined because they have to go through the regulatory system. So it is going to be a much more overseen situation than stem cells traditionally were. But it's because it's important that it's safe and ethical, you know. But yes, affordable gene therapy, yes, coming. Sorry, didn't stick with one sentence.
No, I loved it.
It will eventually be free for sure. It will.
You packed it out. I would have cut you off, but everything you were saying was very interesting. The next question, I'm going to pull the timeline a bit. I'm going to try and make the crystal ball clearer. But by 2030, will we have a gene therapy for longevity approved in the US?
That would be impossible. Approved for a clinical trial, perhaps. As a matter of fact, one just was. The partial reprogrammers were just approved, I believe, to go into a phase 1 study for, was it macular degeneration, age-associated macular degeneration. And that would be the first approval of a longevity gene therapy that could potentially, will likely be used systemically. That's what we're looking at in a human. But this would be just for the eye. And
okay.
It still could not get through regulatory approval in 5 years. It will take at least 6.
Okay, very interesting. So Boyang, a slightly different question. We had Aubrey de Grey on the podcast recently, and he's now predicting that longevity escape velocity, biological or physical immortality, for those that didn't watch the episode, is going to happen not in the early 2030s. He thinks it will probably happen in the late 2030s. And one of the key, let's say, elements to longevity escape velocity being fulfilled is having a gene therapy as part of the kind of suite of solutions. So do you think by 2035 we'll have a gene therapy for longevity?
The quick answer is probably no. Well, it's hard to predict the future, let alone with precision. But a more feasible way to go about it is probably a clinical trial that's targeting some other indications while having significant longevity and anti-aging benefits. That being said, my take is more, well, in the mid to long term, is a capitalist one, in that technology really spreads, right? So if you have a technology that's useful, well, the most valuable companies in the world have demonstrated that the perfect and most profitable way to price it will be the price of an iPhone or the price of a Tesla. It will not stay as a high-end luxury because that's just not the best way to make money. So with that, technology spreads, and once it's approved, say a high price point, and once it has proven its usability and safety profile, it will spread. So I'm totally optimistic on that.
Is self-experimentation an ethical duty for pioneers?
Well, my take is no, it's not an imperative. Well, it has happened in the past for a few different cases. Of course, even for LSD, there was self experimentation for the invention of a catheter for cardiovascular angiogram. There's self experimentation, but no, it's definitely not not a must.
I think that if you're making drugs today and you don't want to take them, you're in the wrong company. Medicine is shifting radically. Most interest in our company is people who want to participate in the therapeutics because they're actually good drugs. And so I wouldn't challenge the whole sector and say, well, you have to take the drugs to invest. Certainly that's not a criteria. But if you're pioneering anything in medicine today, and let's say you've been at it for 20 years and you're still raising money and you haven't wanted to take that drug, you're probably in the wrong business. This is a radical shift towards everything we make should be making people healthier. Now, if you were making a drug for hemophilia and you don't have hemophilia, I suppose it makes sense that you would not take that drug. But when you're looking at the overall population and creating health and health economy that actually makes sense for everyone, so that everyone can afford it. And again, the price tag that I suggested is within the Tesla, between that and the iPhone. Certainly you should be at least wanting to participate in those developments. But not all technology being the same, that might not apply to every area of the world and all technology. We believe that today it applies to medicine.
There's a bit of an ethical question because, as you said, if you're taking gene therapies to extend your life, that's one thing. And I think that will be very much embraced by the many. But when you look at potentially enhancing, let's say, a baby's future intelligence, or you start working at I'm assuming you can work at an embryonic level, right? When it comes to gene therapy, is that possible?
You can, we don't, but you could. There was a poll done in the United States and the UK when I first started in gene therapy. And it was a poll asking people if they would, and they rated different areas. Would you want your child to be healthier, smarter, faster, whatever, more physically capable? And this is not our area. I don't work in embryos. We don't work in that sort of pre-birth technology. But I was shocked by how few people actually would want their children to be smarter than them. I would absolutely want my children to be smarter than me. I have a child with type 1 diabetes. I would absolutely wanted to ensure that he didn't have that. I would have absolutely wanted to ensure that he would have the physical attributes that would keep him unlimited to the future. And any parent who wouldn't want that, I'm actually shocked by. And maybe you have to speak to a parent like me to understand why you would be shocked that you would want limitations for the future of humanity. I do what I do for the future of humanity. I may or may not extend my lifespan doing a myriad of things that are crazy. I probably will, as long as I stick within good, healthy, safe parameters. I'm probably doing a great job, but my goal is to create better drugs so that the future populations don't have to suffer with the same diseases that we die from today. So that being said, if you could stop disease from happening in a child, if you could make it so that they had an intellect that had no limitations, a playground that had no bullying, I would absolutely be for that. That's not my business, and I don't want to work in that field.
But Yang, have you been investing in any sort of gene therapy that is almost playing God in some ways?
Oh, we totally look at the sector of embryonic selection. So the short answer is, as of now, embryonic selection, yes. Embryonic editing, no, because the technology is still not quite mature, not there yet. But if one day we actually have reliable enough technology, then my argument would be how different it is then between these and vaccination for our children. Like some of the vaccines are, of course, compulsory, required. And isn't that, you can say it's an enhancement, you can say it's a prevention or therapeutic, but right, we totally accept vaccine, perfectly fine, right? The mindset have shifted. So yeah, that's the status quo, and we are just developing and discovering more and more better technologies.
And I agree, and I think that you point out something that's really important for people to understand. When you're doing embryo selection, you are in the United States, people are choosing for sex, eye color, other attributes already, and they have been doing that for over 10 years. So I can speak to this economy in that space already. That is already being done here, and actually having genetic testing beforehand and sometimes during in selections of embryos is already being done. So that already is, but is that playing God? I think that we have a little bit of stigmas there. I've met people who said that, they think that gene therapy is going too far, but they didn't think that taking antibiotics or having a surgery that saved their life was. And it's just, it's like cultural nuances that really don't make sense to me. So, at what point, if you believe in such a heretical God that would give you the access to medicine, but then damn you for using it, 99% of the population, I guess, is in trouble, because you can't say that interceding in disease at one point or another is probably more angelic. I don't think. We have decided to be healthier and happier, probably because we believe in being good, and probably better gods than we think of.
When you were mentioning about the children and the parents not wanting their children to be more intelligent than them, I was thinking about how the Overton window is going to shift with superintelligence. And when we have AI that is just so much smarter than us, we will probably want our children and ourselves to be much, much smarter, because we won't be comparing ourselves to one another. We'll be comparing ourselves to, our robot in the kitchen that's able to either wash our dishes or, do its PhD in half a day. So
I say that, this is the thing is, these technologies we're building together, and they've been building together through the memes of science fiction and the writing of early humans, early Homo sapiens sapiens. We have been building something on both ends that's very important. And what happened is we became overregulated in the biology sector, our medicine, And these two, I believe, are supposed to be converging around the same time. And now we will get to a point that we may be fighting for our biological relevance. And so not waiting, but not being dangerous is very important. Getting drugs in the regulatory system so they can have a very close eye and moving them quickly towards the patients who need them now, just as Boyang had already discovered for us. We should be treating conditions, because if we can't treat those conditions, we're in trouble anyway. And then moving them back, as I suggested, to preventative medicine. So they're sitting where they have the highest impact, keeping you from getting sick as quickly as possible, as safely as possible, but realistically as possible for the 36 million people that will die this year of potentially treatable conditions is important. And, as far as life, longevity escape velocity? We've been on this path with medicine for a long time. We have drugs that extend our lifespan already. We're just looking for that next generation of creating such health that we can break bottlenecks on the absolute known definitive lifespan of humans. And it really shocks me that people have a problem with that. They always have a question about somebody else. They always say, well, isn't there too many people, even though they're one of those people? Why should we get sick people healthy when they're going to get sick and they'll want to be healthy? We need to make this more of a pointed conversation towards the individual instead of trying to look at the masses and have them, with their limited knowledge and understanding, try to solve this problem for the masses. Do you want this solved for yourself? If so, push the mandate that we move forward. Because otherwise, a few people will get it and you won't get it, and it really won't be their fault. As a society, we have to say, I don't want to die of Alzheimer's disease. Both of my grandmothers got it. I don't want to die of it. And I think that is a totally reasonable position to take. That's not why I did gene therapies. I did it for the children. Now my focus has shifted to everyone, because the mandate, an 80-year-old is only 8 times 10. We've barely been here. We could do great things together. We can solve so many problems with lifespan, as we've already showed. The Industrial Revolution happened because of lifespan. Every country, when the people live long enough, the country is pulled out of poverty. It's because they live long enough to work long enough to solve bigger problems. And that is critical, that we solve bigger problems. We are on the precipice of catastrophic change to this planet. We need to put every head together that we can, make them as smart as possible, and make sure that biology still matters on this planet in 20 years from now.
Liz, you love this quote that you used recently at Superhuman. It's Harold Wilson. He who rejects change is the architect of decay. The only human institution which rejects progress is the cemetery. When you look at the progress that you and others, Boyang as well, are hoping to make in this space in the next 5 years, and looking at this risk aversion, 38 million people, you said, that could have survived in any given year. What do you think is the biggest risk to the gene therapy space now? I'll start with you, Boyang.
One of the risks that we briefly touched on would be the kind of risk where there could be high-profile aversive event or failure cases. Just even 1-2 cases of such damage the reputation and probably the technology from regulatory approval. While pushing the mandate, educate or advocate for the case, but also be super careful. Well, we can make the case and put it in a positive light.
Liz?
For the exact reason of his answer, I would say special interest. Every year, hundreds of thousands of people die in the United States alone taking their prescriptions as prescribed. The drugs that we take today are not safe, and the propensity for the media, because of special interest, to pull out single cases and actually blow them up as a case for scaring the public when they don't actually turn that focus on their own industries is shocking. And even in the US, there has been some incidences with gene therapy, but they're not being focused on because they have their own special interests behind them. In our case, we work incredibly diligently to be safe. And we have never seen a big negative adverse drug event because we work so hard to be safe and we read all of the literature. This is our licensing partners. We don't actually give gene therapy ourselves, but we work diligently with them to work within certain parameters, but they also need to get a therapeutic effect, okay? Because otherwise people spend money and they're not going to get the benefit and they're just going to die of aging-associated diseases anyway. So we do have to be safe. We know how to be safe. That information is even growing. But when one incident can shut down an entire industry, when the industry standard is so poor, we have to question the bigger authority in the conversation. So yes, we have to be safe, but our biggest threat is not what we're doing. The biggest threat is special interests keeping the public from getting access to the technology.
What I'm hearing is that there are vested interests right now. People are making lots of money in their own lanes. So why would they want this cure to come to market?
Yeah, and we also have to prove we have a cure. So we have gene therapies that will affect certain parts of disease, but you have to, the goal, this gold standard has always been pushed on us to cure all of aging. But we still need to know how each one of these therapies affects aging. We know follistatin has got the safest profile of any gene therapy. Telomerase reverse transcriptase probably will have the biggest impact on lifespan of a single gene. We know we can increase the cognitive scores of people who don't have dementia by almost a standard deviation every time. We know that we can do all of these things. So holding our industry to, you have to prove that you can cure all of aging or you can't move forward is ridiculous, number one, because we have to find out how all parts work in thousands of people. And then in combination as well, this industry needs support and it needs the right people behind it. And I always tell people, stop asking the wrong industries to solve the problem. So you don't go to the oil company and say, bring in clean energy. Now they're being pushed to do that, but only over a massive amount of time in which, we would still be on oil, but they could have pushed for more. I don't know if you remember, like in Florida, solar was illegal for a long time. They actually made it illegal in a state that could have used it the most. So, there are strange things at play. And so, definitely, go to your founders, go and support companies like we have spoken about today to mandate that better drugs come forward and create a voice with your own legislatures and governments that you demand access to this. We're having there's a group that put together a march on Washington in 2026 for the United States. And we'll go to Washington, D.C., and we will peacefully ask for faster approval for these drugs, which was historically very beneficial to AIDS patients and other patients in medicine who needed advanced access. Let them know that you exist. Let them know that you want access, and let them know that we are not their adversaries. I am not Big Pharma's adversary. I want to work with Big Pharma as much as anyone else does. They have a massive arsenal of assets and resources that could help us help people. I'm not an adversary of anyone. I just need people to get access to good drugs.
Just wrapping things up, just want to go deeper into this crystal ball. For someone, myself, I'm 33, so by 2030, would I be able to take any sort of gene therapy in a place like London or Austin or New York? Would I still have to go to a specialized zone? And would it be somewhat affordable for me?
2030 again is within 5 years from now.
Sorry, 2031, I should say. Sorry.
Oh, okay. So if a gene therapy was in clinical trials right now and it got through a phase 1, you could potentially ask for access to that therapy in Montana after it was through a phase 1. The company could still say no. So that would depend on the company. So that's a very short frame. If a gene therapy was in clinical trials for approval and got approved by, and it have to be in right now, and it got approved by 2031, and it went out on the market and you asked for it off label, it would depend on the doctor that you were dealing with. So, that's a pretty tight time frame. But it doesn't mean that you can't go somewhere else and get it. You could get access to a lot of these therapies. Boyang was talking about Unlimited Bio. They're an excellent company, probably in pretty short order, under another regulatory system that is also a regulatory system and has its checks and balances. So you would look into each location indiscriminately, but very thoroughly to make sure that that location you felt was covering the parameters of what you believe would bring you the safest and most effective therapy.
Boyang, jumping on to what Liz has just said, what would you recommend? What advice would you give to someone who's interested in potentially going down the gene therapy route? Where could they access it? And what would be your recommendation, given that you went on that journey recently?
There are different regulatory systems, just building on the direction Liz was heading towards. I'll take an example outside of gene therapy. So in Japan, cell therapy, especially mesenchymal stem cell, specifically autologous mesenchymal stem cell therapies, has been legalized for more than a decade by now. Millions of cases and very clear safety profile and practices, and that is still not legalized in the US. So would you say, Japan is not some, people will imagine like a third world, unstable government that just does wacky things, right? So indeed, different regulatory frameworks and systems with their own checks and balances, their own considerations. So I would say, yes, do your research. This is still cutting edge. Don't just jump to conclusion, and don't to get too bought in by a certain authoritative figure. Do the research if you may. Try to read the literature and studies, and make the judgment call.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Japan being a world-class, absolutely world-class country. And that's true. So I believe stem cells have gone sort of on and off in the US, and Florida has approved mesenchymal autologous stem cells. But it's Japan is a great example. Thank you.
And just to round things off, Liz, just some advice for anyone that is starting their journey today in the gene therapy space.
I would definitely read the literature. I always say, don't take, what I say as fact. Go read the papers, because we did. But you don't have to believe me. You should become educated. Your genetic future is going to be so wildly awesome. The genes that you're going to get to choose to change the things that you want to change about your future is going to become exponential. But I would definitely say, if you're going to get a gene therapy, I would go to the companies that have been around for a long time, because some of the companies that are out there and the people who are out there just see companies that we work with doing the work, and then they come up with their own version. And that really doesn't mean it's the same thing. I'm not pitching me. I might be pitching our partners, because I love them, because they want to stick with the science. I would say read the literature so that you actually understand it. understand the science. Don't let somebody trick you out of believing this is actually evident. And be careful of family members that might limit your future. I mean, I definitely had to do that. Other people I know have to do that. If somebody in your family and your spouse says, oh, I don't believe in this for us, say, well, I might believe in it for me, and then you might come with me if you decide that you believe in it too. Because we do have a culture of what's called deathism. Let's just die together of dementia, but actually dying together of dementia is not a beautiful way to die. It's a very painful way for the whole family, as is heart disease and cancer. They're incredibly sad ways to go. So, sometimes you might have to be a leader in your pack, but go and get educated. And I think that's probably the most critical thing that you need.
Finally, Boyang, for any avid investors, I know there's a lot of people queuing up to get into this space. Any do's and don'ts when they're looking at potential gene therapy?
Well, for the do's, keep an open mind. We are living in exciting times, right? There were people, or even experts, who were just a few years back saying, AI is not going to work. AI is never going to beat human in Go and in many other spaces. Right? There were those who are saying EV is not going to work. Brain-computer interface is not going to work. Exciting times that we're living in, and our primate brain is having a little bit of trouble processing it. So keep an open mind. And for the don'ts, well, I would say just don't jump into conclusion. This is, of course, cutting edge, so much so that even, biology PhDs, even professors or doctors can't give you definitive answers. So what you got to do is really do the research yourself, read the literature, follow up with the latest progress. And yeah, we are going to make great progress and become better as a species.
Liz, Boyang, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having us. It was such a pleasure.
Thank you for having us.
If you want to know what tomorrow has in store like I do, you definitely want to listen to our recent episode where I talked to Peter Diamandis about a future where we could live forever. Thank you so much.